The other day, I watched a documentary called Prosperity, and it was created by Dr. Pedram Shoji, and he runs the website well.org or com or something. And it was really good. And I saw a free screening of it because I'm on the mailing list of Dr. Patrick Gentempo, or whatever his name is. And he is the guy who put on the program series Vaccines Revealed. And that's what I was watching before I had a crisis in January because I felt very disturbed by it. And that's how I got the link to see the documentary for free during this week. And it was really good. And I was reminded about a company that I learned about a long time ago. It was probably 10 years ago. And it's Guayaki or something. And they make yerba mate. And I'm back on drinking yerba mate right now, but I'm getting a different brand because it's cheaper. I used to buy the Guayaki brand in bulk online, but the online supplier that I had, the website's no longer there. So maybe I can buy it in bulk directly from Guayaki because they have a business model where, and this was part of the documentary, was businesses that are giving back, not only giving back, but making sustainability and restoration part of their business model. So the more yerba mate this company sells, the more of the rainforest they can restore. And that's part of the business model. And then they employ people in the area to harvest the yerba mate, and yerba mate grows in the rainforest under the forest cover. So the more forest cover, the more mate, and the more mate they sell, the more forest cover they can restore. And they don't have to put their money back into restoring the rainforest, but it's part of the model. And I was thinking about how part of what I want to work on is restoring the human brain, because they talk about how they want to restore 200,000 acres or something, and the power of that, and that's amazing. And I was extrapolating that to how many brains can be restored, how many pounds of brains, and I actually looked up that a brain is 3 pounds. So how many can one create a business model that restores the human brain from being a brain labeled as defective, deficient, degenerating, degrading, ill, to one that is thriving, flourishing, growing, learning, flowering? We don't think about the human brain being destroyed in the same way that rainforests are and oceans are, but it is being destroyed. And it's so complex, but very simple at the same time. And what is the power of restoring one human brain? Or what is this? How does it change the whole? So having a certain percentage of rainforest, the people at Guayaki talk about how the rainforest sucks the carbon out of the air. So it's not only restoring the rainforest to grow mate, but also because the rainforest is what is going to participate in getting rid of a lot of this carbon. So there's so many layers to what they've designed as their business. It's not the model of, this is what we sell and we don't care what happens to the world and we make money and take the money, but there's costs to other parts of the world. And there are costs to any business, but they're mitigating them to the best of their ability. And also the more mate they sell and the more rainforest they restore, the more carbon comes out of the air. And they can only do so much, but if more and more people think in these ways when they design their business. So one human brain restored takes, for example, X amount of dollars out of going towards the pharmaceutical companies, which in Canada comes out of the healthcare budget, which then comes out of people's taxes. And of course, that is completely necessary when it is. But when one brain is reforested and again thriving and creating energy and creating and not living in this fear cycle, which diverts money and resources to the pharmaceutical company. And people talk about it in terms of cost to the economy. So one human brain restored now, again, possibly contributes to the economy. And that's not really what's important. What is important is that a person isn't suffering as much and they're not going to die 25 years early. Imagine having a person alive for those 25 years, and not only that, but being a creative member of society. And just one person, I think, has a power of, I don't know. So there's probably math behind doing something to calculate. Restoring one human brain to thriving is the equivalent of how many acres of forest or how many liters of ocean or something. For example, I was in the hospital April 2016 in a step-down facility for 33 days. I don't know, but that might cost the system $1,000 a day or something like that. And so that's $33,000. That's more money than a person gets as a amount to live on in a year. Here, a person will get, say, $12,000 a year to live on. So a 1-month hospital stay costs nearly 3 times as much than it does to cover the cost to give the person money to barely live on the disability benefit. So I learned enough that the next time, in January of 2017, this year, I had a major crisis, but I completely avoided the hospital. I stayed with family. I took a bit of extra Seroquel, maybe, I don't know how many dollars worth, not very much. And avoided going to the hospital for 10 to 33 days, which is $10,000 to $33,000 savings. Now imagine giving somebody $33,000 to design the life of their dream and move towards thriving. They might never need another stay again, which some people are in and out of the hospital a lot. And I have been in the hospital 5 times in the last 6 years. So what I'm saying is, if I calculate all the costs after my first hospitalization and put that towards thriving, it would probably be a lot cheaper to help someone thrive than to make them live in poverty. So they have housing first for people who are homeless. I feel people who have these emotional, social, spiritual, psychological crises need dreams first. We need to be helped to live our dream because that's what's going to heal. And if we're able to live our dreams, likely we're not going to fall into this system of poverty. So say it's calculated that it costs $2 million to move someone in and out of the hospital system for the rest of their life if they get a mental health diagnosis. Why not give a person a percentage of that to really thrive and divert those funds out of the hospital system? Not only would it save that extra money, but the person would now be, as they call it, a productive member of society. So producing things, buying things, working. But these things aren't seen because it's not seen as possible that someone, after being labeled with a mental illness, can thrive. It's seen as, oh, you're going to have this for the rest of your life. You need to take these meds forever. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's it fulfills the prophecy of psychiatry, which is what it does. And tomorrow I'm going to the cognitive remediation conference to hear kind of the worst of what they're saying about people who have supposed psychotic disorders and all the cognitive declines that come with it. And of course, they're going to say it's not a result of medication, it's a result of worsening of illness. And it's so complex, but I'm seeing that there's this interplay of relationships, breakdown in communication and social fabric, which open dialogue can help, or dialogue with oneself can help to mend. But I'm seeing also that if there is a breakdown or a crisis and somebody is in that paradigm and on meds, the brain is automatically going to translate it according to that paradigm, being on the meds. It's going to be morphed into symptoms of a mental illness by virtue of being on the meds. Because I think I really just got through something that was really, really challenging. It was not easy. But not being on the meds didn't allow my brain to project symptoms of mental illness as the cause. Taking the meds is the solution in that paradigm, but it also exacerbates the symptoms being translated into that which one is taking treatments for. So by taking the micronutrients, it seems like my being understood that I was going to be moving through some really, really challenging energies. But by taking the micronutrients, I feel that my body had the right materials to deal with it at a physiological and molecular level. And then that ripples all the way to the macro daily life interactions with other beings and family members and people in the community and moving about life. It ripples all the way up on every level. So if I'm taking something toxic, I'm not able to meet what's really happening. And it was really confusing and challenging, and I don't even know what was really happening, but I felt more connected with what was really happening. And it was scary and hard, and it wasn't fun stuff. It was past and awfulness. But by being connected and meeting that challenge, I was able to move through it. But if I'm taking a toxic pharmaceutical to mediate that and modulate that, I'm not able to meet the past or whatever it is that's coming up in the moment, because there's a wall, there's a screen in the way that's saying, no, you can't meet this, you're on these meds because you have a mental illness, which is almost like saying, you can't handle this. And maybe there was a time that we couldn't handle it. And partly it could be nutritional, because stress burns up a lot of the body's stores of certain nutrients and things. So we don't have that resilience. And perhaps when it burns up all the stores of certain nutrients, then we're in the same situation where we can't meet the challenge, because on the very smallest level, we don't have the right ingredients to do so. So then it makes it so we don't have the right ingredients on the macro level, which is perception, ability to meet things, communication, ability to communicate properly. If our cells aren't able to communicate properly because they don't have the right nutrients, it makes sense that the combination of all of that, all of our cells not communicating, will ripple up, and the self, the ego, is an epiphenomenon of the whole being and cells and everything interacting. So if they're not interacting and communicating at the cellular level, it makes sense that we're not going to make sense and be able to communicate with those around us, other cells in the being of humanity. We're not going to be able to communicate properly, and it's perhaps an indication that our cells aren't able to communicate properly. I don't know, I'm making this stuff up on the go. I've never thought about it that way. But I'm going to end this in case I can keep it short.